Welcome. It is Wednesday. We're here with Inside Music Curation. Thank you so much for joining us. We put this series together really to demystify music curation, to showcase our amazing team of expert music curators, and more specifically at Feed Media Group to explore the themes and topics of music curation for businesses, because that's what these folks are doing day in and day out. So today we're talking about becoming a music curator. The journeys that all of these amazing folks took to get here today, the paths, the stepping stones that I almost didn't end up here. We're going to talk about it all today. So I'm very excited to welcome our entire team, Stens, Arturo, Claire, Dario, Juan, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's just dive in. Let's go back to the very beginning. All of you guys had wildly different paths in becoming a music curator at Feed Media Group, but where did it all start? Arturo, maybe you want to head off. What were the first signs that in your life that you said, Arturo might just end up being a music curator?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I remember growing up in my home country in Chile. I remember with my brother. I will use them as a, sort of like to recreate any voices. So I have my little turntable. I have a bunch of 45s from my older brother, and I have this radio cassette where I will tape, interviews with artists, and while I will be playing, music, and I will be like making these tapes, and then share with my mom and the family. I mean, it was super hilarious. And I wish I had those tapes.
Making your own radio show and creating all your own artist voices.
I was curating for my family.
I love it. Do you remember any of the artists that were commonly featured?
I remember the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. I remember the Stories, another band that my brother loved from the 70s. Jesus Christ Superstar, the soundtrack. I mean, I would play pretty much the whole thing. I didn't really have a lot of records all the time also, which is probably any kids.
Yeah, we're always a product of the music around us, right?
Absolutely.
Mike, what about you? Tell us about your earliest signs of the potential music.
Now that I think about it, I was a childhood DJ as well. I grew up on a dead-end street in the suburbs of New York City. And all the kids on my block would play outside, and when I wasn't out there playing with them, I'd be in my bedroom, and I would take my stereo speakers, put them in the window, and I would play music to the kids who were playing outside, and I would love to see what kind of response I would get from certain types of music. From there, I knew it was in my blood.
That is amazing. You were DJing to the kids out on the street. And not only were you trying to establish yourself as like, hey, here's something to listen to, you were actually looking for their feedback to see.
Yeah. Let's see who likes Kiss. Let's see who hates Iron Maiden and really wants me to play more, Bon Jovi or, whatever it was.
I love it. Juan, what were some of the bands on your earliest rotations?
Wow. So it was a lot of rock and a lot of weird pop. When I was a kid, I would make tapes off of like the rock station, which was like WCC, The Rock, and then 95 TIC. So it was always a combination of like Striper and like Scorpions, and then also like Hanson and like Mariah Carey. I think from like an early age, I was always really into just like whatever I can get my hands on. And so, yeah, those mixtapes are most likely at home and very, very confused, but still pretty good.
I love it. So obviously, ending up as a music curator, a lot of these seeds were planted at a young age, but I'm sure that there were some bumps along the road. I'd love to hear a couple of stories about, what you almost did instead of becoming a music curator. Anyone want to kick that off?
Yeah, I can. I can also time on that. So, I guess I was always involved in music. I worked. I studied sound engineering. I worked for in music. then I worked for radio stations, and then I worked for a long part of my career in in the music industry. I mean, particularly for Warner Music. Then at iTunes. But then when I went to grad school, I wanted to take a turn and I wanted to become a researcher, right? So I did my MBA in design strategy, and believe it or not, I joined the AAA with the innovation team. It was very exciting until I got a phone call, from a former Apple colleague, to join Samsung and go back to do, like, and be involved with content. But I was very interested at some point, and like, moving, to a different field. But the love of music just, brought me back to work with music again, and that's what I've been doing at Feed, curating, and it's just, so much fun to do this work.
Stens, I'd love to hear where your path took you.
Well, I discovered in college that I took some music history classes, and it was like a light bulb moment for me, where I could learn all this stuff about music, and there was all this published information, and I could deep dive into it. And I went into college to study trumpet, and I learned halfway through that I actually enjoyed listening to and learning about music more than playing it, which was pretty radical. And like, I have friends on the opposite end of the spectrum for whom all they want to do is play, and they're not that interested in listening to a ton of music. But I was like, this is my sweet spot. So of course I graduated with no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and I fell into a career in fundraising. I worked for a couple amazing organizations, arts organizations, the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in DC and the San Francisco Symphony. And I got to live vicariously through these just tremendously awesome arts organizations. And I went to a ton of incredible performances, but I kept feeling drawn towards kind of the artistic and programmatic things. So I kept kind of, in my very little free time, sticking my fingers into places where I wasn't supposed to be. And sometimes they said, okay, you can do something here. And I was also getting kind of burned out, because fundraising is just really, as with sales, it's a high stakes profession. And so after 16 years, we had our son, and we decided I'd be a stay-at-home dad. And my wife encouraged me. She said, you should do what you love. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what that is. And she's like, well, you should figure it out. You're in your 30s. Or you're almost 40, And so I took some time as a stay-at-home dad, and I managed to pivot into this. And yeah, I mean, this has just been an absolute dream job, to be just doing, living, breathing music all the time. It's incredible.
I agree.
Yeah.
Dario, tell me a little bit about your pathway.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I went to school. I started, as a saxophone player, kind of like Stans, but then found this love for ethnomusicology and ethnography, and that sort of cross between, anthropology and music theory, and really understanding that connections. But then I got sick of academia, and I graduated with an ethnomusicology degree, which in most instances, if you're not going to teach, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? And I needed to pay rent, to eat. And the only experience I had was, I grew up working, my father was a biochemist, so I went to work in biochemistry, and I did that for years. And at first it was great. I had a job, I could, do things, I could pay for stuff, I could buy records and gear and, and all of these things. But it just slowly ate away at me over time. And I just, I got to the point where I had to ask myself a really big question of, like, I'm leaving this very secure job in this space for something that I really love and want to do. And basically I had to start building back over, and spent most of the work that I did in the industry not using my degree. So then felt even doubly ironic that now I was working in music, but not, and then eventually found my way back to Curator, but it was and when it happened, it clicked, and that it was the thing I was always doing, much like the playing records when you're younger and these other things. I was doing this on my free time anyways, on the side. And so to be paid to do it is a joy.
Yeah, so many different roads, to lead you here. And like I said, bumps along the way. And I'm sure that there were also some equally interesting, kind of stepping stones and things that kind of launched you here. Mike, do you want to talk about, some of the things that helped you get where you are today for any of those budding music curators out there?
Yeah, well, I guess when I was in college, I worked at my college radio station, and that's you're essentially curating your shows each week, and that got me into working in commercial radio stations. So I became a music director at an alternative rock station in New York. I also did the same thing here in Los Angeles and San Diego. I worked for Slacker Radio as a music curator for their. I did their UK hits channels, so I was a big Anglophile, and then from there I worked in management for 10, 12 years, and that's how I got linked up with Feed Media Group. Is that I'm part of an artist managers forum on Facebook, and one of our head of music, I guess, is that Bryn's title?
Yeah.
She posted a sort of a note within the forum saying, hey, we're looking for some curators part-time, if you're interested in, if anybody's here is interested in, and I was like, oh man, I'd be down for that. So joined up with Feed Media Group part-time for a few months. And then, for the past 3 months, I've been doing it full-time.
I'm really curious, you were working with those stations, and we're really glad to have you with us. What was it like, being in different geographic regions? How did that influence the music that you guys were?
Oh yeah, it was very regional, and it also, it had a lot to do with the years as well. In the very beginning, in the mid, I started at an alternative radio station in the mid '90s when all of that alternative, all the grunge stuff was just really happening, and on the East Coast, there was a lot more. How would you describe? There was a lot more sort of granola. There was a lot more Dave Matthews Band, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, there was a lot more, because there was such a history of alternative music in Los Angeles. Because there was a radio station here for years that was very popular, still is, K-Rock. They played a lot of alternative music in the 80s. So when I came from New York to Los Angeles, I didn't know anything about Oingo Boingo at all. But people here were like, what do you mean you don't know Oingo Boingo? Like, I could name you 15 of their songs, So it was very regional, just kind of based on, what people were exposed to in those cities.
Yeah. Claire, I know that you have been in a few key music locations. Tell us a little bit about your experience getting here and the different spaces you've been able to work in the music business.
Sure. Yeah. So, my sort of journey did start in an academic sense in some fashion of, I was a history major and I knew I wanted to work in the music industry. And so then decided to add on a double major in media studies and communication to sort of get that background. And with that, I went and interned in Nashville. I loved country music and wanted to get a sense of what the scene was like there. And it was a really important part of just getting a feel of how the industry operates, especially in a genre that can operate a little bit differently than the rest of the music industry, or other subgenres just have little things to them. And this was about 10 years ago, and I was still mailing CDs for this artist management company. So yeah, things have come a long way, but it was a really interesting way to get a full picture of, from publicity to marketing to touring, management, all that sort of stuff, all together in one place.
Very cool. Juan, I know you've done many of the things Claire's mentioning too. Tell us your angle. I know you come from kind of the
it's actually kind of funny. It's like both of your stories are very enmeshed with my. I don't know. Anyways, I actually was a college radio DJ, and due to my experiences working, with CMJ and things of that nature, and also being a punk and metal artist, it actually made me want to topple the music industry. And what I mean by that is I learned how to be my own manager for my groups. I learned how to do my own publicity. I learned how to book. I learned how to promote. And especially in that time period of the early thousands, it moving from, more physical flyers to completely digital was a complete change in the ecosphere of music, really. But the thing that I felt was like the biggest stepping stone and my favorite thing was when I was booking DIY shows. Now, the thing about DIY shows, it's freedom. You're not dealing with bookers. You're not dealing with other heads. So literally when you're booking shows, you get to book the things you want, or you get to book the bands that fit together, or maybe just give you a vibe or an experience. And in that, I love doing that. And to be doing that here at Feed in a different, modality, a whole different vibe has been honestly one of the coolest experiences I've had in my life.
Awesome. How about Stens? What would you say is your biggest stepping stone getting here to Feed Media Group?
Well, I mean, first of all, hearing everybody's stories is fascinating. And, Juan, it's telling that you were really like a master mixer of different artists and genres, because I think that's something that, is really fun to collaborate with you in that respect. But I would say, the number one thing if you want to be a music curator is spend lots of time listening to music and learning about music. And, these days it's amazing too, because I love to read, but there's podcasts, there's been an explosion of high quality documentaries. There's so many ways to learn about music. There's more, there's more that content than you can wrap your arms around. So learn as much as you can about it, and as much variety as possible too. If you're not naturally inclined to be that way with music anyways, this probably isn't the right job for you, honestly, because it's kind of a hard job to get into, and you have to have that kind of insatiable appetite. I would say, though, when I first met with Feed Media Group several years ago, I met with the CEO and co-founder, and he basically said, he was so gracious. He said, "Okay, let's see if you can get some shots on the board. Like, we'll take something you can give us." And I'm like, "Great, I'll try to get some shots on the board." And what I did is I just tried to find a place that was, in the curation space or something where I could closely do something like that. And I've been really, really lucky because I was able to grow with the company. But I would say you got to be kind of knees bent and flexible, because at the beginning I wasn't doing a lot of curation. It was what needs doing that I can possibly do. And it was writing, and it was, social media. And it was a lot of just trying to comb through our catalog, which wasn't very well organized. So it was like a needle in the haystack exercise, but I was game. So just be game, be flexible, be a contributor, and, be positive, but bring your passion into it, because eventually if you persist, that passion and knowledge that you convey is going to shine through.
Yeah, I'd agree on the passion part as well, and the history side, obviously. But I think, there's so many interesting ways to learn about music and how it evolves, and being able to see those sonic connections. And I think, the more background you have about all of that information, the more you can sort of, parlay it into different areas, and be able to see, even just in popular culture, how music is evolving and expanding, and how there's so many different ways, and documentaries as well to follow up on that, and just always be learning. And and when I was younger, it was reading liner notes and seeing who the producers were, and who all the players were in that respect. And now there's even more resources to be able to learn about how music is made, reading articles in magazines, who are people's influences, and drawing those connections too.
Yeah, and I think one other important aspect of curating music for a business in this case, and eventually, ultimately for an end user, is like, it's not using your own taste. You can't be biased about the music you like. And I remember, when I worked at radio, I was in charge of the music department. One of the things that even like the people who were with us, they were like, "Hey, we're so tired of listening to the song." And that was like one of the things that my boss would tell me. When you guys are getting tired of listening to the song, that's when people are just like starting to recognize there's a new song out there. So, and also, people will complain about, some of the people who were, "Well, we're playing this," like because, we're a business, we need to cater to different audiences, and in the case of Feed, that we cater to fitness and health, the requirements are broad, from genres, from, BPM rates. So as a curator, you need to understand that as well, not only from a cultural context, but also from a business perspective. And also, for what the end user, wants to experience, when they are exercising, for our case.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think what Arturo's sort of getting at too, and I think is one of the through lines with all of us is, we're not just DJs, right? It's not like I can play a cool song or do this. That there is this additional layer of skill sets, and so it's slightly different for all of us, but we bring this extra understanding just beyond knowing a lot of music. We're not just encyclopedias in that sense, knowing about the application and understanding what it is our customer is trying to accomplish and how to do that. And I think as far as people who want to be curators, like, everyone loves music, obviously you have to love it to a particular degree, that goes beyond that, but it's not just a passion for music. It's to then turn that passion into a usable skill set, and getting other skills outside of just music is really important and really helpful. So being able to understand, whether it be analytics or trends, and all of these things, these skill sets that we've gotten other positions and jobs that are just as important as the amount of music we listen to, and whether we can name all the members in Yes, like that's it's more than just a culmination of that. It's something that
100%.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
Well, we're getting close to time, but I want to do one quick round of everyone, speaking directly to that. When you're curating music for a business, not just making a playlist, but curating for a business, what's the most important thing to remember? Stens.
Who is the end user, and what is the context? And, your taste is not as important as you think. When you have kind of two equally valid options, it's awesome to be thinking about, what do I like? And then you can pick your pick. But honestly, you want to make it work for the end user.
Right on. Arturo.
Yeah, I second what Stan said. But also there is a pleasure when you're curating, even if you're not, curating with your own taste, that, the work that you do has an impact, right? So even if you're not specifically using songs that you like, you're curating so many different genres that you might not, listen at home. But the results that you can create from those experiences, that's what, drives passion for me as well. When I see something that it's meaningful for the end user and they're enjoying it. And we see that through our analytics.
Yeah. Claire?
Yeah, I mean, music enriches people's lives. And so I think any way that a business can incorporate that into their brand makes it a really powerful tool, and, is also just exciting for the user to have as well.
Awesome. Mike, what have we missed anything good here?
I don't know. I think we nailed it. I mean, I feel like it's understand the customer base, and don't try to be too cool for the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, it's the balance of looking at the numbers, but then also going with your gut, and that's something that takes time and experience, and to not just let one of those override the other.
Well, thank you so much for everyone's valuable time. Again, the wonderful expert music curators from Feed Media Group talking about becoming a music curator. If you're interested in learning more about Feed Media Group, please check us out at feedmediagroup.com and follow along. We're here every other Tuesday talking inside music curation to answer all your questions about curating music for businesses. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.